listening to Depth Perception, supported by our patrons on Patreon. Hey, Depth Perception listeners. We're bringing you our second mystery episode today. This was my mystery topic for Randy. Trigger warning for Nazi mentions. We talk about Nazi flight technology in this episode. I think that's it. I'm excited for you to hear this one. Here's the show. I'm Leo.
I'm Randy.
Today we're going to talk about CIA occult FOIA documents.
I thought that poem in the one document was pretty scary.
That's true.
That was like
Right.
that was like what the twins read in The Shining right before they got on camera.
Within our reach lies every path we ever dream of taking. Within our power lies every step we ever dream of making. Within our range lies every joy we ever dream of seeing. Ellipsis. Within ourselves lies everything we ever dream of being. Amanda Bradley. Via Larissa Vilenskaya, aka Laura V. Faith. That's from that's the introductory poem to a document in the FOIA archives of the CIA called Check Your Mailbox. Ritual, Synchronicity, and Inner Guidance. Yeah, I think this is the document that inspired Hellier.
Because it has the word synchronicity in it.
It's just again, it's this woman, Larissa, gushing about the fact that she went to some kind of occult retreat that used the same check your mailbox metaphor as she had done in some session that she had conducted like a week previous, and being like, oh my God, what is synchronicity? And then she goes through like the rest of the document is just like a group exercise for accessing the Akashic records that she came up with. The Akashic records are like a occult concept from like Victorian occultism. This like library that contains all possible knowledge that you can access somehow. Some kind of altered state. That's about all I know on it confidently.
Yeah, synchronicity is like a big Bader Meinhof hole that you can fall in. Because it's, it's one of these things where, especially with Hellier, I noticed it a lot with Hellier. It's practically the entire premise of the show. It's just like people obsess over something, and once you know all about it, you have these kind of vast reserves of trivia that you can call upon whenever you need them. And I suppose that's like kind of in essence ritual is you create a tradition and you find you find out a way to make it work for you. And so the thing about synchronicity is like, check your mailbox. Like, you check your mailbox every day, right? It's an easy thing that you can make into a metaphor.
Let me explain a little bit what I mean when I say CIA FOIA documents, in case you don't know. So just to break it down, there's a ton of declassified CIA documents, like scanned PDF documents that are often really hard to read, from like decades and decades of various CIA programs, for everything from Project Stargate, which had to do with remote viewing and mind control and all kinds of stuff, and MKUltra, MK Delta, these really fucked up programs related to like soliciting information from people via like hypnosis and like mind control techniques mediated by drugging people and all kinds of stuff like that. And also reports of UFOs. And most of them are just released under Freedom of Information Act. A lot of them are pretty sanitized, but a lot of them are not. And I'm sure that there's many documents that will never be released. there are like thousands of documents for every topic, and of course it goes beyond just CIA programs that deal with occult or unexplained phenomena that in other situations would be associated with the occult or the supernatural, but there's a lot of them that do, and some of them are quite weird, from journal articles in parapsychology journals detailing seemingly pretty scientific studies done on psychics, people who say they're psychic, to remote viewing experiments. Famously, one remote viewing experiment was, alleged to have helped retrieve hostages, I think. I can't remember what conflict it was, what country was holding the American hostages, but
I had never heard of MK Delta as a
I just heard about that today. I don't know if there's actually MK Delta documents.
Yeah, I'm reading through documents now, yeah.
Oh no, it's up here.
On CIA, yeah. Yeah, so if you don't know
the things gleaned from,
if you don't know, and you're probably not going to find it by googling it, but FOIA is the Freedom of Information Act. It's essentially people make requests for specific documents and things of that nature to be released by the U.S. government, and ostensibly they are obligated to. So that's how you get weird stuff about ritual synchronicity and inner guidance and psychic kids and mind control experiments. And
a lot of this stuff you should understand is not stuff that the CIA actually wrote. I mean, a lot of it's CIA memos, internal stuff. But a lot of it actually is stuff written about topics the CIA was interested in, that that they scanned from magazines, or stuff written about the CIA. Like I have in front of me right now an article that was written not for the CIA but about them, that then became part of the records. And then sometimes there'll be notes attached to it written by somebody within the CIA. So it's like it's information coming from a lot of sources, but all relating to a central theme. If it's Project Stargate, it's going to be about psychic experiments that are maybe useful in war. If it's MKUltra, it's going to be about mind control and manipulating people to via drugs or like psychological techniques.
Oh my god, do you want to hear something pretty cool?
Yeah.
So this is Diary Notes 3, which I found in just searching MK Delta.
Okay.
On the CIA reading room. Jack Barman talked to me about the TSD project MKUltra, and particularly the MK Delta aspects of the program. I told him that from what he had told me and from what I had picked up elsewhere, I had the strongest suspicions that we were on very dangerous ground. I urged Jack to pursue this matter thoroughly and suggested we have John Vance with John Teachin about the matter. So what is MK Delta? That this
My understanding of it, according to Occult Confessions, which I was listening to today, is that MK Delta was like the practical applications of MKUltra. It was the results of the theory being put into use in the real world. So,
because the thing about I haven't noticed this on any of the other documents that you linked. There's a lot of stuff redacted from these.
From which ones?
Like all this stuff on MK Delta.
That makes sense, given that it probably is the most damning of any of the ones we've discussed so far, since it involves doing things.
And these are just diary notes. This isn't like all they have on MK Delta are 5 diary notes, a newspaper clipping from I think it was like the Michigan Daily. Yeah. the Michigan Daily, 10th December 1978. A FOIA appeal. CIA drugs brainwashing program inside story. The CIA affair, a bad trip revisited. Address to the Foreign Policy National Security Committee Annual Convention of the American Legion. And a Dear Sir or Madam. So they don't have anything on here. Except for a couple diary notes that are heavily redacted.
Wow. Can you see the total number of documents?
Well, 11.
Wow. That's so much fewer than any of the other ones we've looked at, which tend to have hundreds.
The thing about requesting FOIA documents is that you are only ever going to be given what they are willing to give you. You're not gonna see everything. Like this MK Delta stuff. If what MK Delta is what you explained it to me as, which is practical applications of the results that MKUltra yielded the CIA. There's nothing here about it. There's nothing. It's like heavily redacted. None of the stuff I looked at otherwise was heavily redacted. They're not going to let you see stuff that like makes them look worse than everybody already thinks they are. I mean, just yesterday I learned that Leo and I are practically neighbors to the one of the worst CIA people that there have been, which is Alan Dulles.
Yeah, his whole family's from Watertown. They're all
Yeah.
whole family of like government aristocrat bureaucrats.
40 minutes north of us.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm just like constantly surprised by things that I'm. These are just diary notes. This is like so paragraphs on paragraphs redacted from these things, and you can only imagine what's being said in there that we're just never going to see, never going to know about. And you remember watching Missing 411? He was talking about how he made FOIA requests for documents relating to missing persons.
Yes.
And he was denied time and again.
I don't remember him being denied, but I am not surprised.
Maybe that's something that was in the reading and not so much in the documentary. But yeah, whatever that guy's name was, he made lots of requests to get information about people that had gone missing in national parks and forests in these areas that he devised his own system to say was mysterious. I don't know if they were mysterious under like normal circumstances, but he
was really
created
good
a
at leaving
method.
Information. He created a method of leaving out information.
Yeah.
Basically, he's like a yellow journalist, and he stakes his credibility on the fact that he was in the FBI, which is just getting staler and staler by the minute. I think, even for the most I don't know, just even for the average person.
This is one thing, is that post-career testimony is not doing anything good for you, really, with things like this. Which is just another thing that makes this stuff fascinating, is that, while this may not all be things that the government themselves did, this is stuff that they were interested in. I mean, fairly recently, the government contracted the To the Stars Academy, which is founded by the Blink-182 singer, whatever his name is, to research like alien material and technology. Essentially like the government's role in stuff. Some of the things like this is, MKUltra obviously was a government program and everything, but the government's role in this is to, examine and determine the nature of a lot of things, often provided by people who are making pretty outrageous claims. Again, there's just like a whole wealth of stuff here. Like in MK Delta here, one of these documents is from the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws.
I'm trying to find what you're talking about, this To the Stars connection.
I can send you that another time, or we can talk about that in the appendix or something, but all I'm saying is that you'll find stuff in here that the government, it's not like the government is necessarily working on, like, I don't know, solving ghosts or something. But if somebody claims that they have solved ghosts, the government, is interested in that.
That's a great point, yeah.
And they will contract people out to say, okay, if you provide us with the information, we will analyze it, we'll determine the nature of it. That's what they're doing with to the Stars Academy. That they are claiming that they have access to, alien technology, metamaterials, things like this. So essentially, they're contracted by the government to provide this alleged technology to the government, who will analyze and determine what is actually being provided to them. This isn't all the stuff you're going to find is not stuff that the government itself is actually doing.
I want to make another point about that too that you just said. It's going to be clear if you look into this that if the CIA isn't necessarily actively doing the research themselves, they are putting some kind of intel, like IARPA or DARPA is putting money, particularly IARPA is putting money into somebody else's hands to do this research. And the thing about the CIA is that a lot of the time, even in the cases of this weird occult research, it kind of ends up being a way to get money to like corporations to develop technology under the guise of like a later military use. But what ends up happening is that people will sell that technology to the CIA and make a lot of money if they're successful, or they'll be unsuccessful, but they'll be able to use that technology, and all of that funding they've already received has now given them something that they can sell to, or that they can pitch to investors and start businesses. Like if you look at the way that like MIT functions, there's a lot of that going on. I know Noam Chomsky has talked about it extensively. So I wanted to just pick out a couple of interesting things that we did come across. Basically, our method was I just dove into different FOIA lists of documents and pulled out interesting ones. I came up with some cool stuff when I was looking into UFOs.
Yeah, you can basically just pick a crazy word and search it.
With CIA.
Yeah, search it. Well, just on the CIA website.
True.
Yeah.
Even Google, if you type in CIA and anything, almost every time the first 3 to 5 results will be CIA FOIA stuff.
Yeah, which, I mean, this has been like just the past day or two that I've had any of this information has been like a big revelation about like the wide net of interest that the government throws out. They just want to be on top of everything, right?
Yeah. What was it that you said? Veritatem conoscere or something like that? Like that's
Jesus.
like there's this Gnostic drive in the CIA to like.
I'll have to go back to the CIA recruitment page, which I'm so surprised is easy to reach.
Yeah, the Illuminati isn't real, but the Illuminati is also actually just the CIA. Like that's the closest thing that we have to the Illuminati, for sure.
Veritatem conoscere.
Yeah, they're like the search for truth, like the most sort of the grossest, I don't know, the most sort of sinister, like the morally detached version of like, I don't know, the sort of Gnostic search for knowledge, I think is embodied in the CIA and the way that they just put money into anything, because their motives are always war. Just to summarize a little bit, it's war. That's their goal, is waging war in as many ways as possible. Social engineering, geopolitical forecasting, which goes hand in hand with social engineering, just manipulating populations of people, performing crazy covert operations all around the world.
Analyzing psychic children.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so let's look at some UFO stuff. I pulled out a couple of articles about flying discs. A lot of the UFO stuff is about trying to explain um, UFO sightings. You start to get a narrative starts to form when you click through a bunch of these documents. Over and over, I was seeing specific reports of UFOs. There's a lot of those with notes and memos and letters, and stuff like that. And there's also people who are trying to explain UFO sightings. So that was sort of the mix that I was faced with. One of these articles is was just labeled German scientists article on flying discs, and the thesis of this is basically, are flying saucers the result of advanced German science, Nazi science, fallen into the hands of the Russians after a German scientist was reported to the USSR? Sorry, was deported after a German scientist was deported to the USSR from Berlin. We have a German scientist talking about some lab he worked under that was one of several during World War II, where some Nazi scientists were developing this like flying disc technology that it's not clear to me how it works. There, like aerospace engineers whose technology later, like in other ways, had lasting impacts on flight technology. We're also working on these circular craft that like levitate somehow. Like they thrust upwards very quickly. There were several different models, all based on this circular shape, and 3 prototypes were built. Apparently, they took massive amounts of material to create. 2 of them were destroyed successfully before the Russians got to the labs that the scientists were at, and I think all the main scientists escaped with a few exceptions.
Is this a fact or is this speculation?
This is all fact.
Oh.
This was in these articles. Yeah, it's
Holy
wild.
shit.
One lab was not destroyed in time. They didn't get the message in time, and one of the craft was seized by the Soviets and taken promptly back to, I don't know, somewhere deep in the Soviet Union. Presumably would have been reverse engineered. They also, at one point, one of the scientists who, the author of this article, I mean, I can try to find his name, but it's one of these poorly scanned PDF documents, and it's just so hard to look at.
I think the name might be redacted. It certainly looks like it is.
It very well could be. No. I think I found it by Dr. Edward Ludwig Santiago Chile. So he was a exiled Nazi, I would guess. I don't know if like how easily he got out of there, if he was wanted or what, but it's probably I guess that if he's living in Chile openly, he wouldn't have been he would have been extradited. I'm not sure if he was wanted for war crimes, but what is clear is that he did work for under one of these scientists who was later deported to the USSR, and he implies strongly that this guy allowed the Soviets to start building these crafts themselves. Then basically that therefore all of the sightings of circular disc craft would have been actually existing Soviet craft that were derived from this guy's technology and his knowledge.
I don't remember which article it was. They basically present you with a handbook for how to be discerning about a UFO sighting. They say, if it's at night, obviously the only thing you're going to see is whether things give off light, which can be misleading when you're trying to define a shape or movement, things like this. So they tell you, essentially they're what they're saying is they're saying what the bulk of these sightings look like. They're not telling you how to be discerning about it, but you kind of get the idea that okay, a sighting at night, all you're seeing is lights and maybe vague shapes that could be all kinds of things. it's so interesting that they actually had a prototype of these things to reference, and if they do, since they do have the prototype, and they can cross-reference, like, I'm sure they have an idea about how the technology might progress and everything and what to look for, and there's been all kinds of alien stuff from the government recently.
Oh yeah, listen to this. Listen to this. And I want to get back to that too, but this is this scientist speculating on exactly how this technology could have developed, because he's trying to explain how they could be sighted so far away. And I'll get to that in a second. Some of these sightings are as far afield of the Soviet Union as Africa, and I think even in the Americas. He says, "There is only one more question to be answered. Could such an aircraft carry enough fuel for worldwide journeys? This question is easily answered in the affirmative." And then he goes on and on. Oh, they're very big. They have a huge carrying capacity, even without atomic energy, which it sounded like he was going to go into that. Even in other sources of energy, would be capable of like propelling a craft over such long distances. There have been advances, so it's like pretty. He's just like basically, yeah, this totally is. It's totally possible that the Soviets developed this technology to the point that they can go anywhere in the world, and I think it might have been in this article, but it might have been a different one. He suggests that like if these craft were easier to build, if they didn't require so much material, they would easily rival commercial, like the current technology in like commercial air flight. Um,
Okay.
yeah,
I'm gonna put
and he
a
ends. Yeah, I just wanted to end with this quote.
well, I'm gonna put a document in that I want you to check
Okay,
out.
cool. He ends by saying, "The future will show whether the flying discs are only the product of imagination or whether they are the results of a far advanced German science which, possibly, as well as the nearly finished atomic bombs, may have fallen into the hands of the Russians." As much as he makes himself sound scientific and writes, sort of in this very scientific academic style that I'm sure he finds natural, he is still like entertaining pretty wild speculations, and speculations that certain people so the thing is that the CIA, whether or not they believe this to be true, like curated stuff like this because it was useful, I think, for a certain narrative. It reinforces the idea of like the threat of the Soviets. They're collecting documents and names of people who wrote those documents, who would be willing to support sort of their propaganda as well. It's pretty scary to think that all of these flying disc sightings could be traced back to the Soviets. Of course, the next question would be, why the fuck? When you hear some of the next few, ask yourself, why the fuck would the Soviets be flying over, say, a uranium mine, halfway across the world, or hovering over an oil field? What's the use of that? Anyway, what's the document that you wanted to have me read?
Oh, there's the stuff that was declassified by the Pentagon recently about I say aliens when I mean UFOs, unidentified flying objects, which does not mean aliens.
I'm curious because the reason I was even interested in this topic is I was talking to Mike and he was like, "Oh, did you hear about all the documents that were dumped about UFOs?" And I couldn't find
Not even
anything.
Documents, videos.
Really?
Yeah.
See, I missed all. I tried to find it in my research, and I somehow missed it all.
Google Pentagon UFO and just navigate yourself to the videos.
I guess I just cast my net too narrowly because I only looked through CIA stuff. I didn't realize
Like this, I just opened an article from CNN, dated April 29th, 2020, titled "Pentagon Officially Releases UFO Videos." So, the point of what I was saying was that, presumably, the government would know what to look for, right? Even if, like, UFO enthusiasts don't. Because obviously they don't. Of course they don't. If you're a UFO enthusiast, you're friggin'... The amateur UFO people are just always like... They catch a video of the space station or something. Like it has... I just don't believe anytime I hear about like a person with a telescope in their backyard. the compelling UFO stuff, which I'll have to like look into in the CIA library, but like mass sightings are what really interests me.
I should have saved the document, but I didn't. But there was one really cool one that I read. It was pretty brief, and it was just an account of some kind of military pilot, I don't know what branch, who was flying off the coast of maybe like might have been near Newfoundland. I can't exactly remember. And he saw an object for like 49 minutes, which was very unusual because usually these sightings last a few minutes. And he described on the radio how it was moving, and somebody like on shore at a radar like station like was like traced the path of the object that corresponded with the same time, and also its movement as they traced it across like their radar screen corresponded with the movements described by the pilot. So it was a very rare instance where they had two sources pointing to some kind of UFO that was detectable for a long period of time.
Yeah, and just to reiterate, UFO does not mean alien. It is unidentified flying object.
Yeah.
With that said, you'd think that the government would be able to identify pretty much any flying object. Especially like the intelligence agencies, you'd think they would say it's a plane if it's a plane. I mean, the flying saucers aren't hidden anymore. Right. You'd think they would be able to identify it, even in these shitty videos. Like, the thing that remains interesting about them is that they remain unidentified. I mean, if I'm the government, I don't have any problem, like with regards to Roswell. If we like shot down like a Russian aircraft or something, and that's what the Roswell crash was. Personally, I can't even imagine why they would have a problem saying we shot down a spy craft. Like, you would want the Americans to know. You would want the Russians to know. I don't see why they would do that. It's the fact that they still refer to these things as unidentified. Maybe it is just like weird technology that never made it off the ground or whatever. But some of this stuff, especially the stuff that the Pentagon let out this year, is super interesting. You hear about like Air Force pilots kind of being like gagged when they try to report things to higher ups and all this sort of stuff. I don't know.
Well, the thing that my mind goes to then is, in both cases, both in the case of like specific isolated sightings by like Navy pilots and stuff like that, Air Force people, which there's a lot of people in the Air Force. I mean, and also stuff like Roswell, astronauts, yeah, is that like it's just probably usually the U.S. government testing something or some private company.
Well, yeah, that's the thing
that the U.S. government is paying.
That's one thing about Roswell is
something.
like, if it's Russians, they would say. If it's American, they would not ever.
Yes. The only reason they would not say if it was Russians is if somehow it would implicate them to admit that a certain type of technology existed. And that's a type of speculation that I am not ready to go into.
No, because it's just like things that are so unprovable you can't disprove them.
Even what we're saying now, I hesitated at first.
That's what this episode is all about. This is like, we can't like talk about this and be serious because the fun of this is speculation. What did you think about the picture?
Yes, let's go back to that. That was cool. That was genuinely cool. They do say in the article, all of a sudden the UFO phenomenon is no longer a conspiracy theory. That's you. I guess you can say that, but that doesn't really say.
Well, you can't say that even because it totally is.
No, yeah, it's totally a conspiracy theory unless you mean things are only real when they're validated by the U.S. government. In which case, that's a sad
Yeah.
life to live.
Yeah. Presumably this picture is real. I mean, let's just give the CIA the benefit of the doubt and say they told the truth for once with this picture.
Yeah, this is what you would be looking at if you could see one of those craft that we were just talking about.
And it does look
this is presumably
massive.
one of the 3 that existed.
Like if they can fit a reactor in a submarine, I don't see any reason there can't be a reactor in this thing constantly generating power.
This is probably they described 3 craft. One of them was like a ring with like some kind of dome in the middle where the pilot would sit that was elevated above, and I believe this is the one we're looking at. Of the 3.
Then there's also like the Diglach, whatever.
The thing about these is that the way that they can fly is really it's very unique. They can shoot upwards very quickly.
Uh-huh.
And that sort of lends it matches a lot of reports of how UFOs fly.
Yeah, well, I mean,
and I actually wanted to get into one of those too.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. I'm going to find the coolest one. This was a really fun little read. Flying saucers over Belgian Congo uranium mines. So I'm going to just read a couple excerpts. Recently, 2 fiery discs were sighted over the uranium mines located in the southern part of the Belgian Congo. All right. The discs glided in elegant curves and changed their positions many times, so that from below they sometimes appeared as plates, ovals, and simply lines. Suddenly, both discs hovered in one spot and then took off in a unique zigzag flight to the northeast. A penetrating hissing and buzzing sound was audible to the onlookers below. The whole performance lasted from 10 to 12 minutes. All right. Commander Pierre of the small Elizabethville airfield immediately set out in pursuit with a fighter plane. On his first approach, he came within about 120 meters of one of the discs. According to his estimates, the saucer, in quotes, had a diameter of from 12 to 15 meters and was discus-shaped. The inner core remained absolutely still, and a knob coming out from the center and several small openings could plainly be seen. The outer rim was completely veiled in fire. I love that. And must have had an enormous speed of rotation. The color of the metal was similar to that of aluminum. Okay, they traveled in a precise and light manner, both vertically and horizontally. Changes in elevation from 800 to 1,000 meters could be accomplished in a few seconds. That is interesting because I think it was the other article that described the Nazi technology. By the way, I should mention the article I already read from about the Nazi craft. I don't think it mentioned the word Nazi at all. The guy was clearly like trying to
shy away from
distance himself from that word. But another article I read which described the same experiments that took more of an overview flavor. That one did talk about Nazi technology, and it described also that second article also described the movement of these things in a very similar way, how they can jet upwards very quickly. Yeah. So this guy estimated the speed of these things, maximum speed that he witnessed. Now I'm back to Pierre. He said that they were moving at about 1,500 kilometers per hour. Crazy fast. He gave up after about 15 minutes of pursuing them. He said here's a good detail. He did not regard it as possible that the disc could be manned, since the irregular speed as well as the heat would make it impossible for a person to stay inside the stable core.
Okay, but how fast do the fast planes go, like fighter jets and stuff?
That's a great question. I don't know how he would have estimated this unless
I could look at my odometer and have a car going next to me and not guess how fast they're going. Forget about 1,500 kilometers per hour. But I don't know. Is that crazy fast? I know they have jets that. break the sound barrier. I just
So Mach 3.2 is the fastest that according to Business Insider,
well, that's
in their military and defense section. Jesus
well,
Christ.
okay. Well, I'm gonna read you this because what I'm reading right now contradicts that, which is
Okay, tell me.
number one is the North American X-15. This aircraft has the current world record for the fastest manned aircraft. Its maximum speed was Mach 6.7, which is about 7,200
Whoa.
kilometers per hour. But yeah, so 1,500, that doesn't seem crazy to me. I mean, it seems like more than what you'd expect to.
No, yeah, wait, yeah, it's a lot. It's 6.7 is 8273 kilometers per hour. Wow. Mach 6.7 is maybe they round it up, but Mach 6.7 is exactly 8,273.16.
Oh, well, in this case, they've
hour.
got it. Well, if that's the case, then this is totally wrong. It says 7,200 kilometers per hour here.
Like I said,
well,
maybe they round it up.
See, now I'm like questioning again because this was attained in 1967. So like again, 1,500 kilometers just doesn't seem crazy to me. Like
Yeah, maybe it's not
and
as crazy as I thought.
And like yeah, and for this guy, first of all, just quit trying to estimate stuff like that because I don't believe you. It could have been going like 60 miles per hour, and it would look exactly the same to me, I bet. But like, I don't know. It just doesn't seem outlandish to me.
Here's something kind of dubious, but I want to read it. I basically read the whole article at this point.
Those are my favorite kind of things.
Back to Pierre, Commander Pierre, or whatever his name was. The sketch below, I can't show you the sketch, but it's like the cross section of some kind of disc craft.
I'll edit it into the video if you post it.
Yeah, I will. The captions are in part purely conjecture based on reports by pilots who pursued the discs. Yeah, there's like little notes on it. I don't know what they're getting those notes from. In part, they were learned. This is great. They were learned from secret research institutions. So it's a combination of pilot
basements across the world.
Yeah, I don't know.
Rang out.
Pilots, like a sort of an averaging of different pilots' descriptions plus secret research institutions. The central core contains the explosive. I guess that's the propellant.
Is this
and the
this has got to be like
radar
translated, right?
steerage? Probably.
Because I'm hearing other things that like I could imagine mean something slightly different. Like when you said they were like bathed in fire or whatever it was.
The thing about the rotating rim on the outside is just so hard to believe. I don't
Well,
think
that just sounds like light reflecting.
Yeah, this guy says it was fire rotating. The jets on the bottom of the rim serve to propel the disc vertically upwards. Lateral steerage results from switching on and off various jet groups. I just don't get how you could possibly. I just don't get the function of the rotating ring of fire on the outside. But what an entertaining article.
Well, what if it's like you know how they like paint the noses of like bombers? What if somebody just painted around it? Like they painted like flames around it, and that's all it was. It's doing circles in the sky, and
it's too bad I accidentally didn't put one document in here. There was like some kind of like a missionary who saw like these little objects that sounded similar to the ones that we just described somewhere else in Africa, and it was a group of them moving in a sort of similar way, but in that case, they were like I think it said centimeters, like 30 to 40 centimeters wide. So they were like tiny.
Yeah, well, people are calling that fly that was hanging out with Mike Pence at the debate, they're calling that a drone. So it sounds almost reasonable.
I had another one in here from Stalingrad. Some guy in a hospital with jaundice was, and other people in the hospital all saw some kind of craft move from one horizon to the other. And there's a bunch of stuff like that, little notes. Some people saw something on a train in Baku. Like, there's just all these random little things. And in many cases, it's just like a bunch of people seeing something in the dark, and they have, it's a list of different descriptions that are all very vague, and don't all completely match. I mean, it's more believable that it's a Russian craft when it's somewhere close to Russia, but it's hard to believe that some guy in the Belgian Congo took off in pursuit of what he earnestly thought was a disc, like ringed by fire, that was found hovering over a uranium mine.
Yeah, that's one thing about this is I personally I think I'm more inclined to believe a bunch of stories that don't match than a bunch of people that got one story straight. And least of all, it's just one guy. I mean, Pierre can suck an egg as far as I'm concerned, because unless that was just like translated in a way that like we don't get a metaphor.
Mm-hmm.
You know, or there's some idiom from the town that he grew up in that I'm not understanding. Like, his story just sounds, I mean, like, what is ringed by fire? Was the thing exploding? Is that what he means? Was there like some danger that the ship was in?
No, he means that it was just ringed by fire. The one
So
of
would I have
the,
like a flamethrower all the way around the outside?
it doesn't make any sense. I did find actually the report of the other guy. It was like an aluminum colored disc, and then Father Carlos Maria, when it actually flew, it like lit up with fire around the edge. But again, that was like, they said a large disc. I swear to God, he describes them as
Why would that happen?
Diameter 30 to 40 centimeters. Like, it's
Why
small.
would that happen?
Right. Why would that happen?
Like, in terms of a technology, what would that be for? Are people like throwing themselves at your 30 to 40 centimeter ship?
And in this one, they make a big deal out of the fact that the missionary's companion described it similarly, and they give the description, and the missionary's or the companion's description was just a summary of the main guy's description. It wasn't.
What you're telling me is that, once again, two people got a story straight.
Exactly. And the second person barely did their duty in repeating the story. It was just a list of details.
I think there's a reason that the CIA puts this kind of stuff out when people like make a FOIA request. I mean, you don't see the ones that make you like scratch your head and say that makes sense. And everything when you get stories like Pierre's. So then you have to ask the question, are they hiding something, or is there nothing there?
I mean, something that we're even guilty of to an extent, just by doing this topic, is like we're looking for something and we're hoping, even against like our better judgment, to find something that suggests a conspiracy or a grand narrative.
Well, yeah, but you're not gonna.
We're not gonna. That's what I'm saying. Like,
you're not gonna because they choose what gets out.
But
if there was a conspiracy, the people that are implicated in the conspiracy are the ones who decide what information gets to be out there for you to find.
I would also argue that you're not gonna, because there isn't anything. I mean, I think that if there was aliens, they would have similar motives to the CIA in terms of keeping what they're doing under wraps. So I think you have two potential firewalls there.
Well, yeah, but like, it could also be that aliens are like, so blasé, like, they just don't give a shit what people think, because we're all gonna die before we get off the planet. Like, that's the thing, is like, first of all, the aliens have never come to this planet, and if they did, we never saw them.
I think if aliens came, we'll get back to this sometime.
They didn't build the
life
planet
again.
They didn't build the pyramids for us.
When we get back to our last episode, I think we'll talk about this again. But I would personally say that if anything came here that was life or otherwise, I don't think that something that has something that we would recognize as intelligence would necessarily consider it to be of the same cloth as us. If anything came here and did something, I think that like it would be radically unidentifiable to us, most likely, to the point that it's basically meaningless to look for something that you think would be an alien and then apply apply these categories to it in that way.
If you're in your car and you're driving down a country road and you see a squirrel or something on the side of the road, you're not thinking, I have to conceal the car. I can't let the squirrel know what I'm up to, right? I mean, you don't even think that when you see people, and people are way smarter than squirrels almost all the time.
Yeah. Well,
so, like,
unless we're in a nature reserve, unless Earth is a nature reserve or a lab.
Earth is Jurassic Park.
But again, the thing I want to talk about
dinosaurs.
simulation theory. That's the topic that I want to deconstruct and make fun of more than Mandela effect, more than anything. We're gonna do that in another episode. I'm deciding right now. Yeah, but just the point I wanted to make, and we'll go into it more. I'm gonna spoil the thesis of that episode. If your current metaphor for that's supposed to answer questions about the strangeness of reality could only have come into existence in the last few decades, it's not the be all end all. That's the thesis. Simulation theory is dumb because it's too relevant to be true. If you're gonna say that that's real, you might as well say like that the world ended in 2012, which I guess you can't because it didn't. But
what if it did and this is hell? I want to talk about those psychic kids because that was really cool. So the CIA gathered up 25 little psychic children. I think they said the ages were between, 7 and 15, something like that. They, from what I understand of it, there was some words that I wouldn't, if I was writing fiction about exactly this scenario. Some words that I wouldn't use, channel. If I understand it, they wired these kids up to, some machine that analyzes, electrical impulses in the body. And they put they had these cards that were, had information on them. And the kids and the person supervising the kids were given a double blind where they had to pull a card from an envelope and put it on the kid's arm at some acupuncture point. And the kids had to identify what was on the card without the use of any of their normal 5 senses. I guess they found psychic kids. The kids were supposed to be fairly average or slightly above average in terms of their grades in school. Which
and also
we've learned since then is not a great way to measure the intelligence.
My understanding was also that these kids claimed to be psychic beforehand, too.
Are kids smart enough to do that?
Well, some parent wanted
7-year-old.
Somebody claimed that they were psychic. Somebody got them in that lab. And the CIA wasn't doing this. This is one of those ones where this was a magazine. It's actually I think a Shanghai-based publication on parapsychological research.
Oh, so this wasn't the CIA. This was
This was just something that they collected because it was of interest to them. And
so this is a fluff piece by a magazine.
Sure. No, I mean it's not a. No, it's an academic magazine.
Oh, really?
This is a real parapsychology.
Something a university did or something?
Something like that. Somebody's putting money into this.
I think I found an FBI propaganda movie.
What is it?
So I'm on FBI.gov/video repository, and I found something called the Never Night Connection, which is a 26-minute long short film. This FBI and National Counterintelligence and Security Center film, inspired by the case of former CIA officer Kevin Mallory, details a fictional account of a former U.S. intelligence community official who was targeted by China via a fake profile on a professional networking site and recruited to turn over classified information before being arrested. The
wow.
FBI and NCSC seek to raise awareness of this issue.
Is that the motive?
And help individuals in the private sector, academic and research communities, and other U.S. government agencies guard against this threat posed by foreign intelligence services.
So it's basically like a propaganda/training film.
Yeah. On FBI.gov.
Holy shit. That's pathetic.
Leo.
Bad.
There's more.
There's more.
There's one called Game of Pawns, which has a much shorter summary. The Game of Pawns, the Glenn Duffy Shriver story video dramatizes the incremental steps taken by intelligence officers to recruit Shriver and convince him to apply for jobs with the U.S. State Department. This is a 28-minute movie.
Okay, so announced. I know that we always tell people to support us on Patreon, and you might have realized that we don't actually have a Patreon up and running yet. But when we do, I guarantee we will live comment on these movies on Twitch or something.
I wanna get the Mountain Monsters thing going as promo.
Agreed. We should do that soon.
But yeah, we'll definitely commentate the FBI propaganda films. There's one on state.gov that it doesn't look to be fiction or dramatization, although I'm sure it's very dramatic because I think I see Mike Pompeo. Yep, Mike Pompeo. Called Communist China and the Free World's Future, which is 24 minutes long.
Oh man, I can't wait to watch these films. Holy shit. I think they'll be exhausting. That one will probably be particularly exhausting.
Oh, that's like I said, that's not a short film. That's just a speech by Mike Pompeo.
Oh, it's just a speech by Mike Pompeo.
Yeah.
Maybe we won't. Maybe we'll start live commenting. Maybe we'll start doing commentary on Mike Pompeo's speeches. I don't know.
I think that would be exhausting.
Yeah.
Besides, hopefully he won't be making any more speeches in a couple of weeks.
So it's worth saying that something else the CIA does is actually fund people not only to do research, but to write certain types of journal articles. I mean, people get supported by the CIA in a lot of ways. Previous CIA director actually did a speech at SU a few years ago that I went to, and it was in the Maxwell School, which is like the number one
Were they the CIA director at the time?
No, but he was previously. I can't remember.
John Doe.
It was just like him like it was basically like that it was like a very cultivated atmosphere of like, you're the expert, like let's hear what you have to say. My previous roommate told me about it. It was like, oh, I'm really interested to hear what he has to say, like this guy's an expert on this and that, and like he just, I don't know, it was really just like a let's humanize the CIA session with a bunch of policy students who are going to go on to have careers similar to the who all want to be this guy, and will never probably have to think about the moral implications of it for as long as they live, because there's a pipeline from schools like that one at SU directly to things like Central Intelligence Agency. Anyways, so we've gone through the cool sightings. We found a CNN article which is basically, did Edward Snowden find anything cool when he looked through the CIA FOIA UFO stuff? And the answer was no, and aliens aren't real.
Yeah. Like I said, of course you're not going to find anything cool. Like you're combing through the information that the people who have like the motivation to hide things decide that you get to see.
Yeah, and of course, then the media does its job. CNN does its job by taking it as law. Reducing the Central Intelligence Agency UFOs and Snowden to like flat images. Snowden is the person who has credibility on government documents, and he looked at it and decided there was nothing to be found. It's just a little hokey. That's all that we really need to say on that.
Yeah, the cool stuff in the CIA archive, I bet, isn't about aliens anyway.
Yeah, I that's what I've determined. The coolest stuff was the more idiosyncratic sightings because they paint a cool picture and you can imagine. It's cool in the same way as like that little anecdote from the Mothman episode that you shared of like the Russian soldiers, you know, seeing the weird apparition. It's kind of like cool in that way. It's just like, wow, that's weird.
They give you like a glimpse at like the cool magic earth that we might live in. Unfortunately, we don't, as far as I can tell.
And as far as my life has been going, it's the closest I've come to experiencing anything paranormal to read stuff like this, you know. My mom had a UFO sighting when she was little, which is pretty cool.
Yeah,
It's pretty
unfortunately,
textbook.
kids aren't particularly credible either.
No, they're not. That's the thing. It's like she and a couple of her siblings and neighborhood friends were playing outside in suburban Rochester, and they were like riding their bikes or something, and they saw this circular craft like overhead of them, like low enough that they could see like two rings of lights rotating, like I think in opposite directions, and it was going the same direction they were going over the street, and it was going kind of quickly. So I think they grabbed their bikes and they followed it and went underneath it, and were able to ride on the streets following it from below. And they did this for like a few minutes, and then it abruptly stopped. It just jetted off in the opposite direction that they'd been going, like so quickly that it was gone from view. And that's just like a thing that she has a memory of as a child. It's very weird.
I listened to a podcast, and one of the hosts was telling a story about he had a neighbor in an old town he used to live in that pulled a UFO hoax that like got everybody.
Wow.
I don't remember the details. It was a long time ago that I heard it, but yeah, he just had a neighbor that hoaxed his whole town about a UFO. Like he knew the guy was gonna do it, and the guy wasn't he wasn't even keeping it a secret. He didn't know that he was gonna be doing a UFO hoax. He thought he was just like doing something fun with, you know, balloons or a projector or something.
Wow.
But he just ended up like getting a whole town to see a UFO that wasn't actually unidentified at all because it was just from a house. So
That's really cool.
yeah, it is. It would be very cool. I would love to be that guy, to be able to.
I'd
pull
love to
that
be
off.
one of the people that saw it. I'd love to be fooled.
Yeah, that too. There was I said earlier that mass sightings were really interesting. They have that one that they talk about in Hellier that's pretty good. It's a little bit too War of the Worldsy for me, but I suppose not War of the Worlds, like Independence Day.
Remind me. I don't remember.
Well, they were in that like creepy town with like I don't know if they were just like being drama kids, but they were like, you know, they were getting like frozen out by everybody in the town. There was like people at the gas station were telling them to leave or whatever was happening, and they found some old guy that was at the milkshake counter or whatever the hell, and he was talking about, yeah, one day a couple years ago we had a big cigar shaped aircraft that was over the town for hours and hours and hours just hovering there and all this sort of stuff, and I don't remember it very well, but
I kind of remember that. That was like in season 1.
yeah, I think it was in season 1 when they first went to Hellier.
Yeah.
So mass sightings are interesting. There's the Hudson Valley sighting.
But the cool thing about what Hellier does is they go to a place and they just look and look and look until they find something. It's kind of
Which I
the
love.
dream, you know?
Yeah.
To just go somewhere and just just knowing that you're eventually going to find something.
Yeah.
And just
It's
wait until...
the dream of anybody that watched like Discovery Kids late at night.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Or like that one History Channel documentary about the alleged, like... It was probably fucking ancient aliens. I don't know. Like the giant, like planetary defense system in like southern Siberia, where like allegedly these giant like defense machines arose out of like the wetlands and shot down like the big comet or something.
Do they have
I can't
wetlands
remember.
in
It was
Siberia?
connected to that, something like that, like marsh. Yeah, and well, not really wetlands, but like soggy permafrost, like before the permafrost starts. I think like pretty far up north. I just stuff like that that's really evocative, and then you realize later that the reason it seems possibly real is because they're just not explaining it fully. Just like the missing 411 guy. It's the same principle. Um, so yeah, I mean, there's a lot of cool occult articles that you can find. I mean, the first time I found out that a bunch of stuff was being dumped on like Project Stargate when I was like still in college in like 2015. I remember going onto the website and reading a few, and one of them that I found was like something about this guy's like search for some kind of like medium, some woman in France, like looking for her in her town and like kind of talking about who she was in some kind of parapsychology journal. Or like I found this article again, ritual synchronicity and inner guidance, which is just like somebody talking about their weird like session that they did trying to get people to be able to access the Akashic records. Like there's a ton of like true believers in this stuff that you can find writing about their experiences and their methods on there. Or even certain remote viewing experience reports. Um, but then there's also like a bunch of people who have just been, I think, that are so indebted to the CIA, or, that they kind of have traded it for like career credibility. Like that guy, Russell Targ, who I think portrays himself as sort of a free thinker, but is actually like, in my opinion, like just a useless quack. That I feel mean saying that because he's probably a nice man, but like I can't remember what put me off exactly when I watched his like now taken down TEDx talk or something where he talks about I think he was basically just simping CIA like pretty hard for the fact that they'd funded all of his research and that he believed truly in his heart that like they had made actual progress on remote viewing. In fact, when I first watched that video, I bought some kind of Tibetan like Buddhist text that he was saying he credited with like helping him develop his methods, and I read through it and found it utterly useless because I have no context. I have no context of like Tibetan Buddhist writing, so I don't know what if he just did a deep study of Buddhism or what. But like, I just think that a lot of what people make up to be like really interesting, once you actually look at it, it's not even like, oh, like if I took the time to understand this technically, like then it would cease to be magical. It's just that when you look at it, like it just isn't really interesting anymore. And that's what I usually find when I poke around a little deeper. And I think the same goes for a lot of these reports. If you could find out who this Pierre guy was, it's very possible you would just find out that he was like a notorious fibber, you know, or that somebody else saw it and it really just wasn't. Somebody else with less imagination saw it and didn't think it was all that remarkable. Who knows?
Or maybe he saw something.
Or maybe he saw something. With something like that, with a cool experience report from somebody like actually like seeing something and having something happen, it is cool. And even Russell Targ, like I remember watching that video, and some of the successful remote viewing sessions are really incredible, and it's really hard to explain them. Even if it's just that the odds are that sometime you're going to draw a shape, that actually corresponds with the location of the person, even if that only happens a few times, some of them are just a little bit too accurate to seem like there isn't some what could be called a causal relationship somewhere in there. Like somehow somebody is sensing something, and our best tool to describe it would be like rational causation. But it makes rational causation itself look completely incomplete.
It's
like just utterly broken to even try to put it in those terms.
it's one of those things. It's like on the same level as when somebody's looking at you, right? It's something that like you can try and explain it, you can try and rationalize it, but sometimes you're just like, your senses like activate. Like you something like tickles a sense that you don't use, right? Because people, everybody says five senses, and then M. Night Shyamalan makes a movie about the sixth sense, and everybody pretends like it's just fiction because it was in a movie. But I mean, there has to be something that we're not conscious of yet. I mean, people are still evolving, right? Like, who's to say that there's not like, what was the Rupert Sheldrake thing that we were talking about in one of those other episodes?
Morphic resonance.
Yeah. So who's to say that's not like some evolutionary thing that
There's
we're
this
falling
whole
into
section
now, right?
of if you read the later part of that study of the 25 psychic children, they go into this like pretty like it's kind of a syncretic mix of like science, like Western experimental science, and like Chinese medicine. They're trying to synthesize like these ideas about the eyes and Chinese medicine and how they like are connected intimately with like the major organs into this explanation for how sensory information can travel through like the veins into the eyes. And that's their explanation for how this psychic child can eventually see an image of the paper with the symbol on it and describe it. And that's the explanation for that's what they think is potentially the point I'm trying to make here is sometimes you do feel certain things in a way that you can't explain, and sometimes it's even and the thing that it kind of makes me think about is like I brought up eyes in particular because try to think about how the eyes evolve, right? Like the eyes are an extension of the brain. They're like part of the brain. They're connected to the brain. Eyes evolved out of clusters of sensing organs, right? That were enclosed in a small chamber that had an aperture at some part of it that let in light. And like gradually over time, that model came to be more and more like what like most vertebrates have as an eye today. Like and there was a long period of time where the creature was reacting to information coming into those apertures without any real understanding of like what could be potentially behind that light. Imagine going from being able to detect shadowy bits of light on cells that happen to have evolved some kind of photosensitivity to like being able to see clear images. Imagine like you're one of those creatures that is just starting to get a glimpse of a little bit more than maybe like the other creatures around you. Like maybe you have a mutation. Of course, this would mostly be very gradual, but maybe you have a mutation that suddenly allows you to see focused images. And I know that these creatures didn't have anything that we would consider language, but imagine being the creature that can see that much better than all the creatures around you. And being able to like get out of trouble when another creature would die because of potentially that advantage. And I know I'm exaggerating again because like maybe it would be so slight that any individual creature that had that advantage wouldn't be able to really observe that it was doing better than its brethren because it might not even be able to see well enough to do so. But you get the point. Like there might be certain people who are just a little bit farther ahead on a path towards a potential future, a potential sensory development, or neurological development that others around them might not share.
Thank you for listening to Depth Perception. You can support us by subscribing to our YouTube channel, kicking us a little bit of scratch on Patreon.